Is immigration enforcement finally catching up to crime in Canada? That question is now at the center of a growing national conversation as new figures reveal a sharp escalation in federal immigration investigations linked to violent and organized criminal activity in British Columbia. Gunshots, arson attacks, extortion threats, surveillance footage capturing brazen acts of intimidation. For months, communities in parts of British Columbia have reported a disturbing rise in criminal activity tied to organized networks. Now, immigration enforcement is emerging as a key instrument in the broader crackdown. New data obtained by Global News shows that the Canada Border Services Agency is reviewing 296 individuals identified by British Columbia's Anti-Extortion Task Force. That figure is nearly triple the number publicly reported just 1 month earlier. The rapid increase signals that federal authorities are significantly expanding the scope of their immigration compliance reviews. According to officials, 32 removal orders have already been issued. 10 individuals have been deported from Canada. An additional 9 are currently facing immigration hearings that could determine whether they are permitted to remain in the country. Law enforcement agencies, including the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and Municipal Police Services, have laid a number of criminal charges in connection with extortion-related cases. However, authorities acknowledge that the total number of criminal charges remains relatively limited compared to the scale of the investigation. This is where immigration enforcement becomes strategically important. Criminal prosecutions require evidence that meets strict legal standards. Charges must be approved by prosecutors, and convictions require proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Immigration proceedings operate under a different legal framework. If an individual is found to be out of status, in violation of visa conditions, or inadmissible under federal immigration law, removal can proceed independently of a criminal conviction. In practical terms, immigration enforcement can move more quickly than criminal court proceedings. Police sources indicate that some of the individuals under investigation are foreign nationals recruited locally whose student permits or work authorizations have expired. In other cases, authorities are reviewing potential misrepresentation or violations of immigration conditions. For many Canadians, particularly seniors and long-time residents, this development raises fundamental questions about compliance, oversight, and public safety. Canada welcomes hundreds of thousands of temporary residents every year through student visas, temporary foreign worker programs, and visitor permits. Each category carries defined conditions. Students must remain enrolled in approved institutions. Work permit holders must comply with employment restrictions. Visitors must depart Canada when their authorized stay ends. The vast majority follow these rules. However, even a small percentage of non-compliance can translate into significant numbers nationwide. Monitoring compliance at scale is a complex administrative challenge. It requires coordination between federal agencies, educational institutions, employers, and provincial authorities. Critics argue that reliance on voluntary compliance has created vulnerabilities within the system. Surrey member of the Legislative Assembly, Eleanor Sturco, has publicly stated that British Columbia may have become a haven not only for criminal enterprises, but also for individuals who have failed to follow proper administrative processes required to remain legally in Canada. She contends that immigration compliance mechanisms have not been sufficiently enforced. At the same time, provincial officials emphasize that new enforcement teams are actively targeting those responsible for extortion and organized crime. The provincial government maintains that collaboration between law enforcement and federal immigration authorities has intensified in recent months. Surrey's mayor has expressed cautious optimism, suggesting that meaningful progress is being made. He described the current enforcement push as evidence that the dam is breaking, signaling that authorities may finally be gaining ground. But does the surge in immigration enforcement represent a turning point? To answer that, it is important to understand the legal tools available under Canadian immigration law. The Immigration and Refugee Protection Act includes provisions for inadmissibility based on criminality, organized crime involvement, security concerns, and misrepresentation. Removal orders can take several forms: Departure orders require individuals to leave Canada within a specified period. Exclusion orders bar re-entry for a defined time frame. Deportation orders carry more serious consequences, often preventing return without special authorization. Immigration hearings are conducted before the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada. Individuals have the right to legal representation and the opportunity to present evidence. Decisions are based on statutory criteria, not public opinion. For those already deported, the enforcement message is clear. Non-compliance with immigration law, particularly when combined with alleged involvement in organized criminal activity, will trigger serious consequences. Community concerns, however, extend beyond legal technicalities. Reports from affected neighborhoods describe intimidation tactics directed at business owners. Incidents involving gunfire and property damage have been documented. Surveillance cameras have captured some of these events, amplifying public anxiety. For seniors living in these communities, public safety is more than a political issue. It is directly connected to quality of life, financial security, and peace of mind. Stable neighborhoods support property values, local commerce, and overall well-being. As a government benefits analyst, I can say with confidence that public trust in institutions is essential. When residents believe enforcement is ineffective or delayed, confidence erodes. When enforcement becomes visible and decisive, trust can begin to rebuild. The escalation from roughly 100 cases under review to nearly 300 within a single month reflects a substantial operational shift. It suggests that authorities are systematically cross-referencing criminal intelligence with immigration records. Critics argue that earlier intervention might have prevented escalation. They question whether compliance checks were sufficiently rigorous in previous years. They also raise concerns about whether rapid immigration expansion outpaced enforcement capacity. Supporters of the current approach counter that investigations evolve as evidence develops. Once patterns of organized extortion were identified, coordination between provincial task forces and federal immigration authorities accelerated. There is also a broader national context. Canada has set ambitious immigration targets in recent years, aiming to address labor shortages and demographic challenges. While economic growth benefits from immigration, administrative systems must expand proportionally to maintain oversight. Ensuring that compliance mechanisms keep pace with intake levels is critical. Without adequate monitoring, gaps can emerge. For many viewers, especially seniors on fixed incomes, the intersection of immigration enforcement and public safety raises practical concerns. Government resources are finite. Law enforcement capacity, court systems, and administrative tribunals operate within budgetary limits. Efficient enforcement helps ensure that public funds are used responsibly. It is equally important to distinguish between lawful immigration and non-compliance. Canada's immigration framework remains one of the most structured in the world. Lawful permanent residents, international students in good standing, and authorized workers contribute significantly to the economy. The current enforcement push is focused specifically on individuals identified by an anti-extortion task force and flagged for potential status violations. Is immigration enforcement finally catching up to crime? The data suggests that enforcement intensity has increased sharply. Nearly 300 individuals under review, 32 removal orders issued, 10 deportations executed, 9 additional hearings underway. These are measurable actions. But catching up implies that enforcement was previously behind. Public perception often shapes political momentum. When residents witness visible action, confidence can improve. When enforcement appears reactive, skepticism persists. The ultimate measure of success will not be the number of removal orders alone. It will be whether extortion-related incidents decline and whether communities experience sustained safety improvements. Immigration law is a powerful tool. Used appropriately, it can complement criminal investigations and address immediate compliance concerns. Used improperly, it risks eroding due process protections. Authorities insist that each case is being evaluated individually under existing legal standards. For Canadians seeking clarity, the situation underscores a fundamental principle. Immigration policy and public safety are interconnected. Enforcement must be consistent, transparent, and evidence-based. As this investigation unfolds, further updates are expected from both provincial and federal authorities. Immigration hearings will proceed. Additional removal orders may be issued. Law enforcement will continue gathering evidence related to organized extortion networks. For now, the scale of the response marks a significant development. Immigration enforcement is no longer a secondary administrative process operating quietly in the background. It has become a visible component of the broader strategy to combat organized crime in British Columbia. Communities affected by violence are watching closely. Seniors, business owners, and long-time residents want reassurance that every lawful mechanism is being used to protect public safety. Is immigration enforcement finally catching up to crime? The recent surge suggests momentum. Whether that momentum translates into lasting stability will depend on sustained coordination, adequate resources, and adherence to the rule of law. In the coming months, Canadians will be looking not only at enforcement numbers, but at real-world outcomes. Fewer incidents, greater safety, clear accountability. The answer to that central question will be measured not in headlines alone, but in the lived experience of the communities at the heart of this investigation.